This is Victor Antonio with another Sales Influence Moment. Today I want to talk about a book that I found that is just so great that I want you to go out and get it. It's called Customer-Centric Selling. Now there's a lot of great information in that book, but one of the highlights I want to just pluck out and show to you, at least discuss with you, at least begin the discussion with you today, is this chart I found that was developed by Neil Rackham. Now Neil Rackham, if you're not familiar with him, wrote the book Spin Selling, which is my favorite sales book of all time, but he also wrote another book called Major Account Selling. But Neil Rackham is a behavioral psychologist who did a study on 1,500 salespeople. Basically, he went in and monitored 1,500 sales calls. And what he found out is that as the buyer goes through these sales calls, as the buyer goes through the process that the salesperson is taking them through, the buyer goes through certain changes. And so he actually graphed out how these changes occur over a period of time. Now, it's a very intimidating graph. Even the first time I saw it, I was like, what is that? But let me walk through it because there's so much valuable information in here that I just kind of want to walk through it slowly. Rackham first discovered there are four variables that customers are concerned about. The first one is, do they have a need? The second one is, what is that going to cost me if I decide to fill that need? The second is there a solution fit? And the last part is risk. Now, the example they give in customer-centric selling is one of buying a car. So the first thing you realize is that you need a new car. Let's say you're having a child and you need to buy a bigger car. Now, what happens? So that's the need. That's the trigger point. We need a new car. Now, as you go through this need analysis, you begin to think about what type of car you can possibly buy. So now you're going from need, now you start looking at solutions, right? What type of solution am I looking for? But you're also going to start thinking about cost. Now, at this point, risk isn't a big deal because guess what? We're not really committed to buying yet. So what Rackham said and basically described in this graph that's in customer-centric selling is the following. He says, in the initial solution phase, when you're just trying to find a solution or at least think about what it is you want to buy, notice what's happening here. The need is high because we have a need for a new car, right? Now the solution begins to go up because you're trying to find a match. You know, what is that right solution? But notice right here that cost is not a major consideration in this phase, and risk is beginning to go up a little bit, but not a big deal. In other words, right now we're looking for a solution. Let's say we've decided to buy a specific type of car. Now, once we've decided to made that decision to buy a car, we now move into the evaluation phase. Now we're going to actually look at the different products and maybe do some test drives, right? And as we're going through the evaluation stage of this product, now notice that again, the solution need becomes the biggest right here. That's our biggest concern right now. Notice that need drops off, but risk is starting to rise. In other words, as we're evaluating this new product we're going to buy, should we buy it? Can we get it? Can we afford it? Those things start kicking in. But notice also that cost still is not an issue down here. Fast forward, you've made a decision to buy a specific car. Now, you move into the commitment phase. You know that feeling when you walk into the salesman room and all of a sudden he wants you to sign on a dotted line. This is where you start really thinking about whether you really need to buy. We've all been there. You're about to buy the car and you're like, can we really afford to spend this much money? Can we really afford this right now? Is now a good time? So at this point, notice that the risk has just skyrocketed and people start to go negative right here. What do I mean by going negative? You start thinking about, maybe we don't really need to buy a car right now. Maybe we just can't afford this right now. Maybe that's just a little bit too much money. So risk is number one concern. The second concern now is cost. Notice that risk is up here, cost is here. Now here's what's interesting. A reaction that most salespeople have, that's described in this book, and I think it's right on point, is that when the buyer starts to go negative on the product, in other words, well, maybe we shouldn't buy that right now, maybe we shouldn't make that decision, immediately, knee-jerk reaction from the salesperson is to discount that product. Now, the detrimental part about that is that when you discount a product, when the customer's in this commitment phase, you're basically reinforcing the risk part. In other words, okay, why are you discounting this if it's such a good value? All of a sudden, risk becomes more prominent. Simply said, when you're in this phase of commitment, the worst thing you can do is to add a discount. Because right now, they're not looking at the price, they're looking at what? Whether now's the right time to buy. And again, our knee-jerk reaction always is to give a discount to try to close the deal. What they need to do is actually go through this phase and resolve it. You know how that works out. You've ever been in that situation where you tell a salesperson, can you just leave us for a second? Me and my wife would like to discuss this. Me and my spouse would like to discuss what we're going to do. And as soon as the salesperson walks away, they come back and they've made this decision on their own. And once they basically assuage themselves that they can basically get by on this risk, then cost is the final closer. But what I love about this graph is that it really talks about how often we think it's about money. It's not about cost, it's not about price. Sometimes it's this right here. Can you make them feel comfortable about buying your product? That's the bottom line. It's not the prices. Can you make them feel comfortable? If you can do that, you'll close the sale. This is Victor Antonio with another Sales Influence Moment, reminding you, selling ain't hard, maybe a little complicated, but once you know how, you'll be able to be more effective in selling. Take care. Bye-bye.